Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Fairburn from the Nordic Tourism Collective. And we are here, delighted to be here this morning at the Uzakrota Summit. And we delighted to welcome you to our first panel of speakers. And we have an impressive line of speakers lined up to discuss this morning, and in no particular order. I'd like to introduce them if I can, although I can't actually see them. I'm not sure what's going on here. There we are, that's better. So in no particular order, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. We have Rene Frey, from CEO of Rough Guides and Inside Guides. Give us a little wave, Rene, please. We have Ava Stewart, who is Sector Head of Travel and Tourism at YouGov.
Good morning, great to be here.
We have Tuckett, who is Executive Director of Euromic. Good morning. And we have Dumitru, who is the founder and CEO of WBE. Good morning.
Hello. Morning.
So good morning, everybody. And so I suppose our question is, what on earth is going to await us after this pandemic? Just a bit of context before we start, I guess. We all know that the travel and tourism has been completely devastated over the last year and a half, a year and a bit. According to WTTC, the travel business has lost $4.5 trillion US, which is a staggering amount of money, and a staggering 62 million jobs. So it's absolutely devastated industry. But we're here to look forwards and not backwards. And I think if the global vaccine rolls out effectively, if travel restrictions are relaxed, if there's comprehensive testing, et cetera, with an enhanced health, we can look forward to what we hope might be recovering in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. So our question really is, what will things look like after the pandemic? And our panelists here today represent various different sectors, and they're going to give their perspectives on what to expect, and it'd be very interesting to hear their views. So I'm going to kick off with you, Rene, if you don't mind. So everything has changed, obviously. Even going to the shops to buy a pint of milk is very different today than it was a year ago. So what's travel going to look? What's your perspective? Obviously, the virus is going to leave a trail and a change of habits. And how do you see these changes, Rene? What's your feelings?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think, unfortunately, we can't brush away the virus as simple as that, right? I mean, in our case, we had a lot of staff which were sick. We had quite a lot of parents of staff who died this year. So it's very difficult to look ahead. And I think that at the moment, I really believe that we have to find a way to live with the virus, right? I don't think it's going away in June or July when everybody's vaccinated. Even if you're vaccinated in Europe or the US, there's a rest of the world out there that isn't vaccinated, and it's gonna be with us for a long time, I'm afraid so. But I mean, as I said, we got to live with it, right? We got to find ways of how we can have back our lives, because not only we in the tourism industry, but all the consumers, all the people out there, they want to have back their lives, right? And an important part of life is traveling, discovering, adventuring, all these things that people are badly missing, right? So I think it's really up to us, up to the industry, to find new solutions for our problems, right? The virus isn't going away; it's going to stay. We got to live with it. We got to adapt to it. Unfortunately, I have to say we are not getting a real lot of support from the governments globally. Tourism is like events or restaurants, one of the sectors of the industry or of the economy that is completely neglected in these problems, because it's, relatively speaking, a small industry in terms of workforce, right? Especially in our countries. We will live with it, right? We will get through it. We will find better ways to do it. And I think there's also positive changes that will come, that the industry will develop more into a sustainable, responsible direction. I think this is common sense among everybody, that this is necessary. It's not only necessary for the tourism industry, it's basically necessary for the whole planet, right? And we're just a small piece of it. So slight optimism at our end, slight optimism. Don't neglect the difficulties, don't neglect the virus. It's not going away easily. But yes, I mean, it can't be worse than it was last year.
Well, I'll drink to that. I hope it's not going to be worse than it was last year. Absolutely, Rene. Thank you very much. Just a couple. I'll come back to you on a couple of points before I move on. Interesting. I think to live with the virus is an interesting thing. I mean, one of the things that I see is that it's a bit like sort of going out and getting worried about being run over by a bus. You know, you have the risk of being run over by a bus, but you take precautions against it. But you live with that risk on a daily basis. So is that how you see it? You see it, we're going to have, this is something we're going to have to adapt the way we live, the way we adapt, the way we travel, because this is going to be something that's going to be omnipresent and going to stay with us for a very, very, very long time.
Well, personally, what I fear most is not the virus. I think we'll get the virus under control, but it's more the policy, the governing of all the governments in Europe or in US at the moment, the panicking and the kind of restrictions, right? For me, it's just one word I absolutely hate, and I have to mention it. If they are talking about allowing people to travel again, if they are vaccinated, everybody's speaking about privileges. It's not a bloody privilege, right? It's our full right to travel and to do whatever we want. And we don't want to have a privilege back. We want to have our rights back, right? So I am more worried about the long-term impact on the policies globally, because we will have to live with more restrictions for some time, right? I mean, a year ago, everybody was laughing about the people in Asia wearing masks, right? We're wearing them, and we survive it. And I'm afraid it's not going away as easily. So the virus is something that is going to be part of our lives, unfortunately, I believe still for quite a while. But really worrying from a citizen point of view is the policy, which is just lockdown, close, shut down, shut up, and just, you know, this is not the way how we can run our societies in the Western communities. We simply can't, right? And I think that's going to be very, very damaging to our societies in general.
I think we could probably continue this discussion for a very long time, Rene, and I think I don't think an hour is going to be long enough to cover some of those issues. So moving away from politics slightly, let's go to Ava, because you're sort of your sector, your business is looking. Forgive me for misunderstanding. You're looking at big data and you're looking at trends and that sort of perspective. What's your feeling in terms of how Europe has sort of handled this, and what are there particular problems for Europe? I mean, I know all the indications are that I think we heard in the opening speech on the main stage about the pent-up desire for people to travel, and people still want to travel and they've got desperate to travel. And the ETC have recently published something that says 55% or whatever Europeans want to travel as soon as they can. What's your feeling on recovery and how it might pan out, Eva?
Oh, I think here I'm very positive. I think that it is important that we see that there is a huge purchasing power collected, right? Many people couldn't spend money. And they want to travel, they want to spend the money, and that is going to have a huge impact once those restrictions are going to be lifted. All
right, thank you, Rene. I was actually asking the question to Ava. If she, can you hear me, Ava?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, yes.
Thanks so much. It's a great question, Andy. And so YouGov has a 11 million consumer panel around the world. And every single day, we ask people about their interest to travel, about what concerns them, what do they see as obstacles to travel, and what would motivate them to go somewhere. And it's indeed, as in some of the other surveys that have been published, I've seen that the travel sentiment holds strong. it is consistent because travel is such a personal and is such an important part of our lives that it's not going to be that just because of the pandemic, suddenly people will completely change their attitudes about it, completely change their preferences about it. But what we have to recognize is that travel has become quite a difficult decision, for people to make, because they have to consider possibilities of cancellations and delays and, problems with insurance. Will they need a health pass? Will they need, how many tests do they need? For example, in the UK, the test cost just over £200. For a family of 4 or 5 people to travel abroad suddenly becomes, this kind of cost exceeds what they probably pay for their flights, etc. So there's certainly a lot of considerations that people are having at the moment. And, but on the positive note, we do see that, especially for domestic travel, that sentiment held at around 50% quite consistently, throughout the pandemic and in recent months. It depends, country by country. At the moment, we see a lot of concerns amongst the Italian consumers, in Germany as well. The sentiment has decreased in some of those markets because of the third wave being experienced. So people still react to the news, to the bad news, but they also react to the good news. We see how quickly the sentiment can pick up when we hear about the successes of vaccinations and the rollout, etc. So, there's still a large proportion of society that want to travel internationally, that's for sure. When we look at different types of travelers, which is also an important message to share, is that luxury travelers and those adventurous travelers who want to, excuse me, combine relaxation, activity, city travel, go to mountains and countryside, they are driving the demand. And that demand we can see across all of the different age groups. Yes, we know, I think from other research that's been publicized already, that younger generations are definitely more keen. They sort of have higher, risk aversion, less risk averse, and therefore they do want to go first. But those who will be vaccinated, they will also be considering, okay, I'm probably good to go. I miss the places that I've not been able to visit for a while. Perhaps those will be in the sun, or perhaps those will be somewhere more relaxing, again, in the countryside, etc.
Interesting. 2 things there I'd just like to ask you. One is there's a disconnect, I think, between people wanting to travel and people being able to travel. And I think it's undeniable that there is a pent-up demand and people still want to travel, and everyone says, okay, I want to travel. But the very fact that they can't is what's preventing them at the moment, for various reasons, for quarantine reasons, for restrictions, for border controls, for lack of airline capacity, whatever it might be. So do you have any views on how the European sort of regulators have sort of managed that? Because it's a bit like taking your water bottle on a plane. So if France says you can only take 10 milliliters of water, but Spain says you can take 50, there's going to be complete chaos. So there has to be a sort of regulation, a pan-European regulation of how this works. So it seems like it's that side of things which is causing the issue. It's not the demand. Is that a fair comment?
That is a fair comment, but again, slight differences across, different types of consumers and in different countries. So we do see more of a differences. The one trend that continues throughout Europe is that the millennial generation have continuously outpaced all of the other age groups. So if you are focusing on international travel, and you're trying to, create that demand, this is a really, really great, target audience to go after. But you have to realize that for them as well, in many countries, they'll have to wait for their vaccination. Looking at some of the vaccination rates at the moment, some of the countries like Italy are looking, at several years before they vaccinate, 70% of their population. And that is a real concern. So, how do you actually really create those opportunities to travel? At the moment, we have pretty much an agreement across Europe that, it will be a test, it will be a health passport, or will be some sort of proof that you've already had COVID, and therefore you have the immunity, so you'll be able to travel. I don't expect that that's going to be a requirement domestically, even though we have seen that, they've pretty much trialed this in Israel, but I think it's too restrictive. It invites a lot of criticism from various people who see that as, having a lot of issues attached to that. And so it's probably best not to further impose any additional constraints or requirements if you can avoid it, because that will affect demand again.
I mean, I know sort of 20, 30 years ago, when you used to travel around Europe, you have to have vaccination certificates to travel, and that was a fact, and that just happened. And I think maybe that's something we're going to end up doing again in the future. So thank you, Eva, for now. That's lovely. Thank you very much for your thoughts there. Let's go to Hugh. Can I speak to you? Can I ask you a couple of questions now? So Euromic, forgive me if I get this wrong, but Euromic is an association of DMCs, but you primarily work in the MICE sector. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. We have 50 DMCs.
So what's your perspective then from that side of that? Because previously up to now, we've pretty much talked about leisure, so the leisure sector and how what will happen there. But in terms of MICE, what's your feeling there? Is that going to come back first? Is that never going to come back? Is it going to be completely stymied by the fact that people are now doing what we're doing now and having calls online, etc., etc.? So what's your views on that?
Thank you, Andy. Euromic is an association of 50 DMCs that specialize in the MICE industry globally around the world. Association has been going for 47 years. We've seen a few crises and weathered a few storms over the years, so we've kind of been around the block a few times. But to answer your question, the MICE industry, so meetings, incentives, conferences and events, is unfortunately the most fragile of the tourism industry. It's normally the first sector of the industry that suffers, and will most probably be the sector of the industry that's last to come back. We are looking very much with bated breath at the leisure industry, because once the leisure industry starts and goes, then hopefully the MICE sector will follow after that. But at the moment, from a corporate perspective, no corporate client or no association or organization is going to arrange a meeting or an event where potentially it puts their people in harm's way. So we have to get to a level where it's completely safe, or the risk of travel is incredibly low before we start to organize those. Having said that, the MICE industry is most probably one of the most resilient, one of the most reactive industries in the world, and it's proven that we can already hold safe events in a very safe and effective manner. There are protocols in places in hotels and convention centers, in exhibition halls and venues. It can happen. What we need to do is get to a stage where people are able to travel, as you said, safely, and that protocols are in place. And I would agree with Rene. What's lacking here is, a concerted government policy that is looking at this. We cannot wait. The industry cannot wait for every last person in the world to be vaccinated before we say, okay, it's okay to go ahead. We're going to have to live with the virus. We're going to have to implement protocols that do that. And it will most probably be a combination of a vaccine passport, a testing regime, and very enforced protocols. I think a combination of those three will enable the industry to get back on its feet again. So, yes, we are starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. but we are very dependent on the leisure industry to get going first.
Forgive my ignorance, because my personal background is more on the leisure side rather than the MICE side. This is a sort of quasi-political question. I'm sort of slightly reluctant to ask it, but I'll ask it anyway. What's the government support in terms of, is it just lumped into the sort of general sort of leisure, the general travel business in terms of or is it regarded as something different?
No, it's treated as something different, and unfortunately, the events industry in the UK and also very much around the world is a forgotten industry. A lot of the freelancers, a lot of the people that work in meetings and events are suffering badly, and we are lucky in some areas of Europe. There is some support for that. But in other areas of the world, there's very little support. So it's been an industry that has suffered very badly. Most of the industry, and it's not like there's other things. When the meetings and events industry stopped, it stopped, full stop, overnight. All the audiovisual companies, all of the destination management companies came to a complete grinding halt. And for many of them, they have not seen any form of revenue for 18 months now. And because our lead-in time and our planning time is so long, we are actually looking at Q2 of 2022 before actually things start happening again. Realistically, that's when we're working towards, when we will start to see money and revenue starting coming in. So it's a really tough place to be at the moment.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the lead time, because the leisure time, you can pack your bags and you can travel tomorrow. But when you're talking about the MICE business, then you've got that huge delay and huge lag in organisation, etc. No, very interesting, and we'll come back to some of those points that you raised. But let's move on to George. George, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
So my understanding of your business again is you're technological provider to the industry. You do a lot of work with the OTAs, with destinations, with DMCs. I know personally from my own experience that the DMCs have been pretty much very badly hit over the last year or so. In terms of your experience, how do you see that sector, the online sector, the OTA sector? How do you see that being affected? Is that a sector which is going to come back? I mean, there's an argument that this is a sector which is going to struggle in the future because people will tend to move towards a travel agent rather than an OTA, for example.
Yeah.
Do you have a perspective on that, George? Maybe you could share that with us.
Well, yeah, what can I say? OTAs are not in the good position either, like everyone else now, because everyone in technology relying to their business is related to the bookings. So as no bookings are coming, or very few of them, then well, everything is not on the same level as before. So as a technology provider, I saw, although that things are moving in the right direction a bit. For instance, the bookings in this year are definitely better than last year, and I'm talking about online mainly. Well, this is because we had some lockdown that were off in UK, the UK, for instance, and the UK is a good market now for the online, better than before. But well, the online business faced some challenges that are quite specific, and you can imagine that they have to deal with a lot of cancellations. They have to deal with a lot of refunds, and it's another situation that maybe was not initially thought of. The hotel itself that are doing live updates via channel managers or via extranets, they did a lot of data updates, but mainly on the close sale, maybe on less availability, maybe on more restrictions, and that puts the travel technology companies in positions to handle more data, so they spend more to analyze more, to deal with more data, but with less bookings. So it's, let's say, a bit worse than thought, because you have no bookings at all, but you increase your infrastructure's expense because the hotels are changing a lot of their availability and restrictions. And each time a change in the government policy is happening and the hotels got a bit of optimism around, they start opening again. After a while, they have to close it again. So all this open and close, if you talk about distribution, puts a lot of load on all the server infrastructures and all the technology side. And that is quite strange because it's affecting the travel tech altogether. Well, on top of that, at least the online had enough data to provide us reports, and these reports was quite good in these times to understand a bit what is going on. We still keep the optimism up. I think everyone is talking about what we call the revenge travel, as was already discussed here. People are eager to travel, and once that happens, things will be better, definitely better. But as a travel tech, you have to, in a way, change a bit of relationship with your partners and try to be more flexible in providing their services. And what you said is quite true. This is what I noticed. I think we will talk about again of the rise of the travel agent for the next period. Was a discussion about the death of a travel agent when the big OTAs came in place, but now it will be a bit in reverse, because people, in order to travel, they will need a lot more information than before. So either OTAs will manage to put that information on screen, so invest in more technology and more mechanisms to make a destination page fulfilled with info, or they will lose because the travel agents will have that info and they will be able to serve the customers via the consultants with all what they need before actually the travel. So I feel that it will be a bit of change of balance here. I think the travel agencies and the B2B world will start rising up again, and the OTAs maybe will go down, or at least will stay on the same level as before.
Interesting. And as a sort of technology company, which you guys are, are you thinking about giving any sort of company secrets away, obviously? Are you thinking about, in terms of all of the new type of protocols which will be required for travel, is that something you're looking at from a technological point of view? Because obviously there are lots of different considerations where people are considering destinations to travel to, how they travel, etc., etc. Is this something, perhaps an area that you're looking at to look at where we go with the future with this?
Well, definitely we are looking in that, because without that, it will be absolutely impossible to actually finish a booking journey. It's just the important is how we can get the information and what is the better source for that, because it has to come from the ground. Okay, it has to come from the destination itself, or maybe from the hotel itself. And we have to make sure that once we pick it up, we are distributing to all the levels needed to reach the end traveler. Our technology, what we do is not only for OTAs. We have a lot of technology for the travel agencies or for wholesalers or bed banks. So that put us as the company in a good position in a way, because we can serve both type of selling channels to the users, and we can provide different mechanisms that each of them may need in a different ways. But again, if bookings are not starting to come, the challenge will be there for everyone, because the travel tech companies have the hit as well, because the clients have the hit. So it's like a chain reaction. And now everyone is waiting to see what is going on, how this politic around the governments of Europe and the world will align, and when people can start actually doing bookings. If it's domestic or regional, it's good enough for us. Doesn't have to be international. I mean, a booking has to be there, and even if you have to cross the street to book a hotel near your home, for us it's fine just to be there.
No, it's weird. We're in this weird sort of limbo land at the moment, where I think 6 months ago everything was very bleak and very dark, and people were just, okay, let's look forward to the future, whatever that might be, and people were quite happy with that. now we're in the situation where, okay, we're nearly there, but actually we're not quite there. And it's like one step forward and two steps backwards, and everyone's sort of just waiting and to see what sort of happens. So Rene, I'm going to come back to you because I started with you and we're going around the table and this is quite fun way of doing it. So in terms of you mentioned a couple of things when you spoke about, you mentioned sustainability in terms of the way that people will be looking for holidays, and one of the things, looking for vacations and looking to travel. And this is something I'd like just to explore a little bit. Do you think that's something which people are going to demand more of now? I mean, for example, would people prefer to go to an area which I'm very familiar with, which is say sort of Scandinavia, where there's virtually no one around at all, or would they still want to go to Milan, where it's very crowded, or Venice, or whatever? Do you foresee some sort of trend in the way that people are looking for destinations?
Sorry, was that me? Oh, no. Rene, sorry.
Up to you, Eva, please.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't hear who the question was to.
Well, I assume this year we will still see careful travel, right? I think that people will first go for domestic travel. They will search the not crowded places. But if you look at Bournemouth last year, once they open up, it was a very crowded place, right? I think the fact that everybody is looking for a place that is not crowded, it's not Milan or Venice, is making it difficult for the other places too. But in general, I feel that people are going to be more cautious, right? They're going to book later. They will require more information. Like George mentioned, I really believe there is a need for more information. There's a need for updated information. Consumers will be more careful in booking. They will be booking later. They will be comparing more choices. And they will think especially more, where the hell do I really want to go without having the risk of being under quarantine, or as Eva mentioned, the vaccines, the testing, which is so expensive. I think that makes it still difficult this year, right? I think that consumers will be more careful. They will require more attention. So yes, I agree with George. It's a good moment for travel agents, right? This is our time. This is your time to be in front of the customers and help them make the right choices. But in the long term, I'm afraid human beings are very, they tend to forget. And unfortunately, I believe that in 3 years, 4 years time, the corona pandemic will just be a note in history, and Venice and Milano will be as full as it was.
Well, that's a very gloomy prospect, Rene, if I may say so myself. I certainly hope that's not going to be the case. But thank you for that. I mean, Eva, moving to you now, Eva. The UK obviously has, probably more by good luck than anything else, managed to be quite well progressed with the vaccine rollout. So are you beginning to see sort of trends in terms of sentiment? Are you, and to pick up on Rene's point, are people looking, or can you see, or is there any indication that people are looking for different types of destinations or different types of travel?
Yeah, so firstly, I'll answer the question about the vaccines. I mean, in the UK, we see interesting things every single week if there is a ministerial announcement, which tends to be a little bit more negative for the industry, we see the sentiment dip right back down. And then as sort of the good news about vaccinations proceed, we then see a pickup again. What people consistently indicate to us is that they want to go. They're pretty sure they're going to go in the next 12 months. They are going to take several trips, or at least one. But what they don't want to do immediately is to book, because first of all, they want to see that we are going to be hitting those milestones that the government has set out, that the dates will not move, and that they will be able to go. And as soon as that happens, we're now looking at probably around 14 million people in the UK who are holding back from booking their next trip, because they want to see that, whatever comes out on the 12th of April from the government, or that we are going to hit that 17th of May, as soon as they have the confidence that this is good, they're going to start booking straight away. And we are going to see that huge demand coming back to the market if everything goes well to plan. Now, let's hope that happens, because, you know, a lot of destinations will certainly benefit from it. Now, in terms of destinations themselves where Brits want to go, you know, their favorites are constantly on their mind, you know, Spain, Greece, Portugal, etc., you know, all the Southern European countries for sure. There is a very good view, strong positive views about Scandinavia and Iceland, for example, and people do want to go to America as well. So there's a lot of interest in long-haul destinations as well as short-haul destinations. It's just that you have different people wanting different things. So it's very, very important to know what your consumer wants. What's your consumer now? Because this may no longer be the consumer that you know that was your repeat customer, you know, for a number of years, because, you know, pandemic really has changed things.
It has, definitely. And I think, I mean, the interesting thing is that I think, you know, you can say, yes, people may be interested in going to Iceland as opposed to going to Spain, but you've got to be realistic about the numbers. You know, 10,000 people may go to Iceland in a year. 10 million people may go to Spain in a year. And there's
absolutely agree. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We'll see if Spain is being that destination, because, you know, if they don't, you know, really control their COVID situation, you know, quickly in the coming months and become really ready to accept tourists in summer, you know, you might just see all those bookings shift to alternative destinations.
Well, I mean, certainly from my own perspective, we have seen a trend in what we term as alternative destinations. So rather than someone going to, say, Copenhagen, for example, they go to Aarhus, or they go to somewhere else, and they go to the smaller, which is slightly different. And that in itself is just like a sustainable thing to do. Is that a trend, Hugh, which may transpose into the MICE sector? Do you think, or do you think people still want to go to Paris or London or whatever? Do you think there may be some movement in that direction?
I think it depends, Andy. It depends on the objectives of the event. So we see very different, even though it's all grouped under the MICE umbrella. You know, it depends on the type of industry event. So, for example, if you are having a World Medical Congress, then obviously accessibility, the ability for a destination or a city to be able to host that type of event is high on the destination choice. When it comes to incentive travel, which is inspirational, then anything is on the cards. And we've actually, over the last couple of years, seen a trend towards what we call secondary cities or secondary, you know, destinations. It's all about creating something. You know, incentive travel is all about going somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily go to on your own, for a number of reasons. So it's really dependent on the event. I think from destinations that will open up first, and I think that will purely come from where people are able to go. The moment that some of those corridors or the countries that are the most organized. So last week, for example, Iceland made an announcement, or I think the beginning of this week, that they will now allow UK and US travelers to arrive if they have the vaccination. So I think, you know, those type of notifications are helpful. That will start to get pique people's interest in a destination. And if they weren't thinking of going there before, they definitely are now, because it's an opportunity. And as Rene mentioned, and I love the term, is revenge travel. I think there is a desperate pent-up need, and people will travel as soon as they possibly can.
I must say there are claw marks on the wall behind me where I've been desperate to get out of this house over the last 6 months. So I know exactly what you mean by that, Hugh. Just a question, Hugh. I'll just come back to you on that. In terms of events, obviously we've all been on endless Zoom calls and driven each other mad with these types of virtual events, which do work and they're very successful. But there is a feeling that actually, if we can actually get together and actually physically shake hands and be in the same room, that would be really where we want to be. Is there a room for the dreadful H word, the hybrid? Is there room for a sort of, and maybe this I mean, the people talking about, okay, we can't quite do a proper event yet, but we might be able to do a hybrid event. Is that a reality? Do you think people buy into that concept?
Yes. I think meetings and events will never be the same again. I think going forward, there will always be some form of online component of a meeting for those people that can't make it. Again, it boils down to the type of event and the objectives of the events. When you are talking about motivational, inspirational travel, so when you're talking about product launches, sales kickoff meetings, incentive travel, hybrid or digital just doesn't cut the mustard. Unfortunately, the analogy I will use is like fake tanning lotion. It does the job, but it's not quite the same as being in the sun. It doesn't do it. However, that said, a lot of purely regulatory meetings that are not necessarily designed, or those meetings that have to happen just purely because they have to happen, will most probably go online and remain online. And that's also the industry moving to a more sustainable approach. Eva mentioned it as well. It's very, very important that the MICE industry becomes more sustainable. So it's not always easy to justify putting 400 people on a plane and flying them to the other side of the world for a meeting or for an event. So if it can be done online, it most definitely will be. But if you want to inspire people, if you want that human connection, and I always go back to Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft, and he said, Zoom is great, it has a wonderful place, but we're missing the 5 minutes that happens before a meeting and the 5 minutes that happens after a meeting, where those human connections are made, where we build the relationships with our colleagues, with our staff, with our clients, and that's super important, and that's what people are desperate to get to back to. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely concur with that. I mean, example A, ITB this year, which was notoriously a complete disaster for everybody. You just can't do an event like that on virtually, because ITB by its very definition involves walking around endless corridors in the middle of Berlin, and then randomly bumping into people, and that's what ITB is all about, and you can't replicate that. And WTM in London is a very similar event, but I think very focused events where, as you say, you have a specific purpose. It might be, just like a set of people meet another set of people, whatever, with a specific objective. It just takes a couple of hours, or maybe a morning or an afternoon, bish bash, all done, and that's perfect. And I think that's exactly right. So yeah, no, I completely concur with you on that. And George, I'm going to throw a complete curveball at you, because you're our sort of token techie this morning, and I think you have that sort of that thinking. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about virtual travel. Is that something which is ever going to take off, or is that a complete forget it, that's a waste of time? Or is that an inspirational part of the process?
Personally, I don't believe in the virtual traveling part. Personally, maybe other people can argue with that. It's like a gimmick, okay? It's like a game, yeah. I mean, could be fun for a while, but it will just increase the anxiety in the end, because you will feel that it's fake, okay? You'll feel better for a while. You'll just navigate through the streets of, I don't know, Dubai from your screen, yeah? It's like a Google Earth on a streaming philosophy. And again, it's fun, it's nice, but you cannot replace it, okay? even the VR stuff, because now it's a lot of virtual reality. You put your glasses on, and you are definitely in an emerging situation and an emerging feeling, but still is not the same, because you start moving around and you got dizzy and you got sick and you want to get out of it after 15 minutes. So yeah, it's something that would work maybe for a short while, but on a long term is completely not a solution. Again, personally thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's exactly right. And to use Hugh's analogy, it's like it's not quite the same thing, is it?
Yeah.
And you're missing the 5 minutes before a meeting and the 5 minutes afterwards. What you're not getting is you're not getting that sort of little alleyway around the corner where you find a little bar and just have a little coffee.
You miss the smell of the streets, the smell of the cars, the smell of the people. I mean, it's the atmosphere itself. Although I can say that I saw some very nice, let's say, websites with this virtual traveling, and they even put a radio on the background for the city you are in. Okay, so basically, when you walk through Dubai, or you are in a virtual car in Dubai, you hear the radio, local radio in Arabic, and it's okay. It's a nice fake, and could be nice for a couple of days or maybe a couple of months until the real thing is coming back. So again, we need the real thing to come back.
I think they had a promotion in the Faroe Islands last year, which was a virtual guide. I don't know if anyone saw it, where you literally had someone with a webcam on their head, and you could move your. Ava, did you do that? And
my friend actually organized that.
Yeah, and you literally press your left button or right button, and this person actually moves as you want. So it was quite bonkers. But I think interestingly, I think the virtual side, if anything, actually it serves a purpose. It's almost like a sort of substitute for the old travel brochures in effect. It's like, this is what it looks like. So instead of looking at a picture, you can immerse yourself in it a little bit. It will never replace the real thing, but it can actually sort of increase the sort of desire to travel and desire to go there, I think.
Yeah, and I may just add that could have a different impact on the newer generation than on medium old generation, let's say, because newer generation is more they adopted the technology quite fast, and they are all the time in VR. I mean, it's only ERL in real life. They have a specific world for what's happening outside of their world, and their world is inside. So maybe they can adopt it faster than us being middle class. But still, I don't think it's good, and I don't think it's healthy, to be honest.
No, and well, I just thought I'd ask that because a lot of people have been sort of voicing this is the way forward. But anyway, so I think we've only got 10 minutes left, so I think we're going to start sort of trying to summarize some of this. So one of the things which hang on, what's going on? One of the things which we spoke about a moment ago was the idea that we got to live with it. We've got to live with the virus because it's going to be around for a long time. It's probably never going to go away. But we've got to look at recovery. We've got to look at where we're going to be maybe in 12 months. We're going to look at where we're going to be in 5 years' time. So it's an impossible question, but what's people's feelings in terms of where we're going to be in 12 months' time? Are we still going to be talking about domestic travel? Are we still going to be talking about just the neighboring markets? Do you think there's going to be any return to long haul travel, or is it really going to be a slow? There's two scenarios. One, it's going to go like that, and the other one is really just going to bumble along. So I'll just go around the table and see what people think on that. So, Rene, what's your views on that?
I think let the governments open up the gates, and there'll be a flood. It's as simple as that.
Right. Okay. So again, the governments keep coming back as a theme. This is quite interesting. And maybe we should have a separate panel discussion about how useless the governments are. I mean, that might be an interesting discussion.
I didn't say that, Andy. That's not what I said. They were useless.
Eva, what's your feeling?
I think that those people who are holding back for various different reasons at the moment due to their concerns, I do expect that they will be booking later in the year, or they say that they already have booked for later in the year and maybe beginning of 2022. So I feel that that demand that we would normally have maybe beginning of the summer will just simply shift into the autumn months. And then there will still be a lot of people who will want the winter sun getaway. So I hope that by that point we will be in much better place, and so we will see those people back onto the planes and back to their sunny destinations.
But will it be just purely European, or will there be international travel by then, do you think?
Absolutely international. I'm fairly confident, because when we look at what people are saying, where they want to go, there's so much demand for America, for example, but even, the destinations like Maldives feature quite frequently, and some of the further away places. So as soon as Asia is happy to receive, the tourists, then I think there will certainly be a market segment that will want to go there.
Right, brilliant. And international travel intercontinental travel has always been a key part of the MICE business. I mean, that's obviously something which, I guess it also depends a lot on airlines and airline capacity and where the aeroplanes are, doesn't it?
I think that's the missing piece of the puzzle at the moment, Andy, and I think that's very much where the governments and the regulations need to step in. I think we can look forward to most probably, realistically, another 4 to 6 months of false starts, of things starting to get going and then potentially being locked down again. But I agree, once those protocols, once it becomes the norm, once we've figured out how to travel through airports and get on airplanes and travel and be allowed into a country safely, once we've got that formula right, then I think the floodgates will open. Then I think it will be a very, very quick return to normal. And I think everything's on the table. I think we'll see a return of our historic popular venues and destinations, as well as a whole new load of places that we haven't seen before.
George, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I would add that, in my opinion, we will see more domestic and regional for the near future, and I think in the summer we will see a lot of bookings. And but I'm not sure it will be all international. I think people, they will still want it to move around and to use the cars and maybe the ground transportation instead of jumping into the plane, because of the regulations, because of they are afraid, because they will restrain themselves a bit. But they will like to go to vacation, and if they have the possibility, they will. But I think to be more domestic and more regional than international.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. The idea of using personal transport rather than public transport, aeroplanes, is obviously something that is obviously going to be coming back first. And I think certainly with the notion of international travel involves getting on a plane by its very definition. But if I'm just living in Germany, I can quite easily drive over to Austria or whatever on my holiday. And I think that's certainly. Yep. We've been joined on this session by an esteemed guest. Good morning. How are you?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. We didn't want to interrupt this very interesting discussion, but at one point we need to move into the next panel. But actually, we have a question from the audience. So if you don't mind, I would like to put it in front of you, and then you can pick anybody to answer it. So we've got one of our audience member asking, will cruising be an alternative for big meetings? And provided that the cruise companies can provide the safe bubble travel, is cruising an alternative for the MICE industry?
I guess that one's mine. Yes, it is. Definitely. I think you know, at the start of the pandemic, the cruise industry got a lot of bad press. You know, we had Princess Cruises stuck in Japan. A lot of people looking at cruise ships, but I think the cruise industry has done a huge amount of work on getting themselves ready for a post-pandemic world. We're starting to see regional cruises now operating around countries and not necessarily getting on or getting off. But in the end of the day, it can be a very safe environment, provided that everybody on board, all the staff and the team are vaccinated, and there is a very strict regimen about who's allowed on the ship. But I think if you get that right, being on a cruise ship is most probably one of the safest places in the world, if you know that everybody on board has been vaccinated and that there's no virus.
that I would feel much more comfortable getting on a cruise ship if I know that there's nobody there. Otherwise, it turns. We've seen that horrid report from Brazil. You know that there was a cruise. I think it was a German cruise, and at the end they had like one case somewhere isolated, but no port would take them on, and that just get into a nightmare.
They were at sea for months, weren't they?
Yeah. So that's it. If I may just as a personal remark, Eva, your forum or your platform YouGov is really great. I've been one of the first participants from day one, and it's a great way to participate. It's, you know, you feel that you're part of the decision-making process, although probably then your single opinion doesn't matter so much at the end, but the polls are really interesting, and I have the app and it's kind of going on and on. So I highly appreciate that, and I can highly recommend to anybody to log on YouGov and to participate in all of their polls. And you're running great polls in Germany, by the way. That's where I'm logged in.
Thank
so
you for a shout
really,
out.
really good one. Thank you very much. This has been a very interesting panel, and I'd like particularly to thank you, for kicking it off with so many important thoughts and questions about what's going to come after the pandemic. So Eva, Rene, Hugh, George, and our moderator Andy, thank you very much, and stay tuned, stay with us, and you're going to be hopefully all with us live in Istanbul. No cruise ship needed. We're all going to be in a hopefully good place, all safe and all ready to go. We just have to believe in it and cross our fingers and make sure we do the right things until December. So, yes, sir, do you have any question to our panelists?
No, but I want to thank you all. So it was a great conversation and I learned lots of things. But maybe we can all go to Istanbul by cruise. So we can make a cruise trip all together and then we can meet at Istanbul.
Yes. The approach into Istanbul, I don't know if anybody of you has ever done that. The approach into Istanbul by seaside. Yeah, it's just amazing because you slowly approach the skyline and it all seems very small, but at the end you just see that the city has no end. We've got 20 million people living in Istanbul, and you can literally see each single one of them while driving or while floating in by cruise. So that's really good. So waiting for you in December, all of you, and hope to see everybody. Thank you, Andy, again for moderating us, navigating us through the panel. And to our panelists and to everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, stay well, a good day and a good weekend. And we're going to go into a little commercial film break until we get on for the next panel. Stay tuned for Uzakrota Europe online version. See you in a minute.